I'm certain this part of Bob's story is 100% false. That said, we're only 10 minutes into a 2-hour interview with plenty more to come, and I haven't analyzed the rest of this. There might be parts that are true, who knows? So let's keep listening. Hello, detectives. A poll I ran a few weeks ago showed that many of you want me to look into Bob LAZAR. So in today's video, let's watch his appearance on the Joe Rogan podcast to figure out if he's lying or not. Without further ado, let's listen.
Bob, thank you very much for doing this. I really appreciate it. I understand that you've told this story many, many times. You've been grilled many, many times, and it's very stressful for you. So I really, really appreciate your time. For people who don't know the story, there is a documentary. Jeremy Corbell has a documentary out right now. It's called Bob LAZAR, Area 51 and UFOs.
And Flying Saucers.
And Flying Saucers.
Bob LAZAR, Area 51 and Flying Saucers.
Okay. Yeah. I first heard your story decades ago. I told you last night when we went out to dinner, I've seen pretty much every interview you've ever given. I've followed the story incredibly closely. Mm-hmm. But for people who don't know the story, let's give them the bullet points. You used to work at Area 51. And Area 51, you went like, huh?
Well, we want to be accurate.
Okay.
Area S4.
S4.
As I've said time and time again in my videos, people don't like to tell outright lies or make things up. Even psychopaths try not to lie as much as they can because they know they could get caught. So if someone must lie, they'll tell the smallest lie they can. For example, they'll be very careful about the words they use so they don't technically lie. This is known as hedging language. And it's not always deliberate. Sometimes it just happens subconsciously because you know you're going to lie. For example, when Bob said we want to be accurate, so Area S4, he revealed something in his words. He revealed a want, a desire to be accurate in this interview, which may be true, but that's not the same as saying we must be accurate, or better yet, just being accurate. In other words, Bob said that he desires to tell the truth in this interview, but he may not be able to. It's a very important distinction. It reminds me of when CoffeeZilla interviewed the alleged crypto scammer Amio Talio.
We can give you anything and everything you want. So there's nothing hidden. We want to be as open as possible, and we want to talk straight, talking facts. We hope you've got some very intense questions for us.
When Amio said, we want to be as open as possible, and we want to talk straight facts, he chose his words carefully. This only means that he would like to be honest and talk about the facts, which may be true, but that's different from actually being honest and talking facts. In other words, he's saying that he desires to be honest, but he may not be able to. It's a very important distinction. Does Bob starting off this interview with a hedge mean he's a hoaxer or a liar? No, of course not. But we are off to a less than perfect start. Let's keep listening.
Okay.
It's about 15 miles south of Area 51.
Okay.
But,
you worked in how would you describe it?
I guess within the Area 51 compound. You can call that a subset of Area 51.
And you got that job. Before that, you were working...
Before that, I had worked at Los Alamos
right.
National Labs in New Mexico.
And you were involved in what kind of work there?
Nuclear weapon development, physics. I mean, they do everything there.
So how do they approach you to say, hey, Bob, why don't you come on out to the Nevada desert?
Well, the way this went down was, at that time, it was 1982, I had put a jet engine in my Honda, and Los Alamos put it on the front page of the paper. It said, Los Alamos man, physicist at the lab, built this 200-mile-an-hour, Honda jet car that I drove to work every day. So I was known in Los Alamos, the guy with the weird car, and you could hear it from a mile away. Anyway, the day that came out on the front page of the paper was the day Edward Teller, the father of the hydrogen bomb, was giving a lecture down there at the lab. And we didn't have much going on that day in our group, and I asked if I could go down there. And I went down there early, and Ed Teller was outside, leaning on a brick wall there and reading the front page of the paper. Now, this is a guy out of history, so I introduced myself. Hey, I'm the guy you're reading about there. And we talked for a little while, and it was cool. Fast forward to years later, I had moved out to Las Vegas and had, left Los Alamos and, went on to other things. And I wanted to get back into the scientific community. I left to start other businesses and that sort of thing. So I sent resumes out, and one of them went out to Ed Teller and referenced our meeting, back in the day. And anyway, he remembered me and gave me a reference, somebody to contact at EG&G. And that's pretty much how it started.
So you get a phone call or a letter? Like, what do you get?
One way to tell if an interviewee is lying in an interview is to ask yourself, are they helping the flow of target information or are they halting the flow of target information? For example, when Bert Kreischer interviewed Liver King on his podcast, Bert asked Liver King if he was against steroids. Instead of telling Bert what he wanted to hear, which was a clear position on steroids, something like, I'm opposed to steroids, or I'm not opposed if they're for medical use, Liver King went on a long, non-responsive tangent. In other words, when Bert asked Liver King about his opinion on steroids, Liver King halted the exchange of target information. That's one of the reasons that we were able to safely conclude that Liver King was taking steroids weeks before More Plates, More Dates exposed him.
Sounds weird, but like, other than the fact that you have a body that you have earned on your own, are you against steroids?
This is what I'll say. I care in the most positive way, because when somebody says, hey man, you're on steroids, and they've been saying this for 20 or 30 years. I've been working out since I was 8. So when I was in high school, hey man, you're on steroids. This is a great compliment, right? This couldn't be a greater compliment. I mean, yesterday at the fight, some guy really said to me, are those actually fake? And I'm like, yeah, they're ab implants. They're $10K each.
So back to Bob Lazar. Is he helping or halting the exchange of target information in this interview with Joe Rogan? When Joe Rogan asked him how S4 first got in touch with him, what did Bob say? Well, he talked for 2 minutes about how he built a Honda jet car, met a man named Edward Teller, moved to Las Vegas, and all of this was 2 years before he even sent a resume to S4. In other words, Bob told us a lot of things, but none of them had anything to do with the target information. As for UFOs, government conspiracy, does Bob's seeming reluctance to get to the target information mean he's a liar? Not necessarily. To be fair, I think everything he just said was true, which is why he talked about it at such great length and in such great detail. To figure out whether or not Bob Lazar is a hoaxer, we need to keep listening and see if he's just as talkative and just as detailed when he talks about the target topics, the stuff we and Joe actually care about, which is S4, UFOs, aliens, government conspiracies. So let's keep listening with that in mind. Is he helping or halting the flow of target information?
Well, I got what did I get? I got a letter initially and went down for an interview probably a couple times. And it was down at EG&G Special Projects, which was at McCarran Airport at that time out in Las Vegas.
And did they give you any sort of job description of what you were applying for?
They said it was for I can't remember exactly what they did. This was a long time ago, but I think it was advanced propulsion or something like that. Something relatively generic, and they said it's in a remote area. It's going to be some days on, some days off, and it was kind of not exactly a full-time job, but you might have to be out there for 2 weeks at a time and take 2 weeks off. So it was kind of the work schedule would be kind of broken up.
And did this seem attractive to you, or did it seem weird?
It really wasn't weird, because people that work at the test site, anybody that's familiar with the area up there, working at the nuclear test site or at the Tonopah test range north of there, that's typically how things go.
So you had known about it from the scientific community? Because Area 51 at that time was
No, they didn't say anything
classified.
About Area 51.
Okay, so they
just said it was in a remote location, and you just know it was up at the test site.
Right.
So, but there was no mention of Area 51 at that time.
So they've done hundreds of nuclear tests in Nevada. That whole area there's giant chunks of Nevada that people.
Yeah, there's a big piece of Nevada, and it's split up into different areas. There's a nuclear test site. There's Area 51. There's the Tonopah test range north of that. There's little sub-areas. There's areas where they test chemical weapons and things like that. So it's all broken up as a, gigantic test area.
I don't know about you, but I'm surprised at how boring this interview is, given that the person being interviewed is someone who allegedly worked with alien technology. So why is that? It goes back to what I said before about helping or halting the flow of target information. Joe is about to ask Bob 3 questions. As you listen to Bob's answers, ask yourself, is Bob helping Joe get the information, or is he halting him from getting the information that we and he want to hear about, which is aliens, UFOs, conspiracy theories, right? We don't care about Honda jet cars and nuclear test sites. Or is getting Bob to talk about these things like pulling teeth?
There you go.
Let's listen.
So take me back to first day on the job. You accept a job. They take you out there.
Yeah. It's the first day, really, I didn't really get to see a whole lot. The first day was essentially just paperwork. That's when I flew into Area 51 proper. And I left McCarran Airport and flew what they call the Janet flights. Just, a passenger plane from Las Vegas to Area 51. And it was really just going through a mountain of paperwork that day, from security clearances to, it was like 2 or 3 hours of just solid paperwork. And that was really an uneventful first day.
Joe just asked Bob about his first day on the job at Area 51. Bob told him about his onboarding paperwork. Is that helpful or halting? Question number 2.
When did things get weird? When did you realize, like at what point in time did you say, hey, this is not normal work? Like, this doesn't even seem like it's from this planet.
That, I can't tell you what day that occurred on because so much time has gone by, the days have kind of fused into one, and I can't separate the days.
Joe explicitly asked Bob, when did things get weird? Consider, how would you expect this question to be answered? Bob's answer was, he can't say exactly what day that occurred on. Is that helpful or halting? Remember, none of this means that he's lying. We haven't made that determination yet, but it's something that we consider in our calculus. At the end, when we make our final conclusion, all these things will factor in.
Was it a slow burn, or was there a moment of recognition?
Well, the first inkling I had was when I came in. There's this facility that is at S4. It's in the side of a mountain. And normally we had pulled in with the bus and gone around the front through a normal double door. This time that I went in, there were hangar doors open. I went in through the hangar door, and in the hangar door was the disc, the flying saucer that I worked on. I saw it sitting there, and we walked by it. It had a little American flag stuck on the side, and I thought, oh my God, this finally explains all the flying saucer stories. This is just an advanced fighter, and this is hilarious.
In statement analysis, there are a few words that tip us off that the speaker is probably fabricating their story. Sitting is one of these words, especially when it's used to talk about an inanimate object. For example, Bob said he saw the flying saucer sitting there. I know it sounds strange, but the way Bob used the word sitting indicates that he was probably lying about the flying saucer. Studies have shown that liars use words like sitting, laying, or standing about inanimate objects, but we don't know why. One reason could be that the liar used their imagination to put the object into the scene, so when they introduce it, they automatically use an action word like sitting there or I saw it laying there. I'm very skeptical of Bob's story at this point because of the use of this one word. Of course, that does not mean he's lying. As I say a lot in my videos, we need more than one reason to think that someone is lying before we determine that they are. So let's keep listening.
I went by, I slid my hand alongside it. I got reprimanded immediately for touching the thing. And there was a guy, an armed guard, that followed us in and just said, keep your eyes forward and your hands at your side and just walk in the door. So that was the first time I had seen anything that was weird. It was some time later that I was introduced to my my lab partner, Barry. And we had some of the subcomponents of the craft in the lab.
Everyone has a personal dictionary. In other words, everyone has a different, specific idea about what a word means. For example, if I ask you to picture a girl, what comes to mind? You might picture a 5-year-old. Someone else might picture a 10-year-old. Still another person might picture a teenager. If I ask you to picture a woman, something different comes to your mind. The same goes for female, lady, gal. They're all synonyms, but you have a specific personal definition of what each one means. And this is why we can look at someone's personal dictionary to tell if they're lying. If someone is telling the truth, their personal dictionary stays consistent throughout their story. For example, if a witness says he saw a girl shoplifting, he will refer to the suspect as a girl throughout his statement. That's because she met his personal definition of a girl, so that's how he sees her. He won't call her a girl in one sentence and a lady in another and a woman in another. He is bound by his personal dictionary. The person he saw met his definition of a girl, so that's the word he uses. A liar, on the other hand, may change their words while telling their story. That's because they're not talking about a specific thing or person, because they're making it up. So they might picture it one way at one point and might picture it a slightly different way at a different point in their story. In other words, a liar's personal dictionary is inconsistent. Even in this very brief story that Bob just told about seeing the UFO in the hangar, he changed his language multiple times when he was talking about the flying saucer. He called it the disc, the flying saucer, the thing, and the craft. There doesn't appear to be any reason for him changing his language like this, which suggests that he's probably making up this aircraft, this flying saucer, and placing it into his story. But maybe he does have a personal reason for seeing the UFO in all these different ways, so I won't stake my reputation on this one, but that won't be necessary either. Bob Lazar admits to being a liar without even realizing it in this next segment. Listen closely.
Barry was very anxious to get a new lab partner, so he was very talkative and couldn't wait to show me different things. And it was in the demonstration of the reactor working where it caught my attention to where this is technology that doesn't even exist. So, I mean, that was the first time I knew that this is really something different.
What was it? What was it? What was it about this reactor that made you think that it didn't exist technologically?
Well, it was I actually have to back up because there were some briefings that I read before that certainly gave me the impression that this was going to be a weird job, but this was the first hands-on thing. This was a small reactor about the size of a hemisphere, about the size of a basketball, on a metal plate, and when it was running, it produced a gravitational field of its own. Now, this is something that we can't do. We can't produce any gravity. The only way we get gravity is from large quantities of mass. But there's no machine we can have that turns on that makes gravity. Like, you can turn on an electromagnet and it makes a magnetic field. We can't make a gravitational field. Anyway, this device was producing that. And Barry said, almost like he was bragging, go ahead, try and touch the sphere. And I couldn't. It pushed my hands away, just like two like poles of a magnet. So that was...
so like when you take two magnets and you try to press them together and they push against each other?
Yeah, that kind of cushion feeling, but you can't get them together. The closer you put them, the more they push. But
and you felt that physically
with my
your hand?
Yeah. Now there's nothing that does that, and that immediately caught my attention. Going, wow, this is something else.
What was your thought? Like when you felt that and you knew that there was nothing that you were aware of that could produce this?
Then that connected me to the briefings that I read on the first day at S4 was that everything that I had read was apparently accurate.
What were you reading?
Leakage is a concept that often comes up in my videos. Basically, the concept is this. We always speak based on everything we know, so the words we choose to use may reveal more than we want them to. For example, if your boss asks if you left work early yesterday, you will choose different words if you know you clocked out early than if you know you didn't. Whether or not you clocked out early, you will always answer based on everything you know. When your choice of words reveals that you are guilty, That's leakage. In a past video, we actually used leakage to determine that Liver King was taking steroids.
You're going to be so happy and so fulfilled and have so much energy, so much positivity, so much love and light. You know, I say how you do anything is how you do everything. I believe that my physique is the least impressive thing about me.
When Liver King says, my physique is the least impressive thing about me, it's leakage. It doesn't fit with his persona or his brand image, but it may reveal shame about his body. And I suspect that shame might be that his body isn't so impressive because it's the result of steroids, right? So he's not impressed by it. When Bob Lazar said, this is technology that doesn't even exist, this is something we can't do, the only way we get gravity is from large quantities of mass, there's no machine we can have that turns on that makes gravity, there's nothing that does that, he was leaking the truth. He's admitting that he knows this gravitational reactor he's talking about does not exist. He's directly telling us it does not exist. This to me is an admission through leakage that he's making up this part of his story. Just as I was certain Liver King took steroids based on nothing but his own words, and Nadia cheats on Warzone based on nothing but her own words, I'm certain this part of Bob's story is 100% false. That said, we're only 10 minutes into a 2-hour interview with plenty more to come, and I haven't analyzed the rest of this. There might be parts that are true, who knows? Bob talks about going inside one of the UFOs, he talks about UFO test flights, he talks about government UFO programs. Let me know in the comments if you want me to analyze all that, and I'll make a part 2 of this video. If you like this video, you'll also like this one. Until next time, stay true.